everyone. Thanks for joining us in another episode of Living in Santa Barbara, where we shine a light on the remarkable people that bring vibrancy and meaning to our town. I'm your host, Kathy Henry, and today I'm so happy to introduce my friend Doug Grant, a lifelong resident of Carpinteria with a deep connection to the area's history and beauty. Born and raised on his family's ranch, Doug shares captivating stories of growing up surrounded by the natural wonders of Santa Barbara. From his racing career to scuba diving adventures on the Channel Islands, Doug's passion for exploration and preservation shines in his experiences. He also reveals his family's intriguing legacy, including his father's books documenting the Chumash petroglyphs and his mother's role in founding a renowned parent-child workshop in Carpinteria. Join us as we delve into the remarkable life and memories of Doug Grant in this insightful and engaging conversation. So, Doug, where do we start?
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Thanks for being here. So where should we start?
Oh, well, I don't know. I guess you already said it. I'm a lifetime resident of Carpinteria, and it's been a great place to live in. And I've done a bit of traveling, but every time I always come back.
Mm-hmm. So how did your family end up in Carpinteria?
Well, a little over 100 years ago, my grandfather bought a big chunk of property here. He was from the East Coast originally. And then ultimately, my mother, who was the fifth of their 5 daughters, my grandparents, she married Campbell Grant, my dad, and they were living in Hollywood because he was an illustrator for Walt Disney. And they ultimately moved back here to the ranch where I was essentially born and raised. And I lived in one big family here on this property.
Mm-hmm. So your grandfather bought the ranch and he raised your mother?
Yes.
Okay. So it's from your mother's side of the family.
Correct.
Got it. And so we're in a house right now that you built. Is that correct?
That's right.
Yeah. How did that happen?
Well, one time when I was about 20 years old and I had just retired from my motocross racing career, I wanted to build a house. I've always wanted to build a house. And I asked my grandfather if I could build one on his property, and he gladly agreed.
So you retired from motorcycle racing at age 21?
Yes.
Okay, let's get back to that one. Okay. So your dad, you told me a lot of great stories about your father. He wasn't just an illustrator for Walt Disney. He was more than that, right?
Yes. After he retired from his career, his position at Walt Disney Studios, he got interested in. He was an author and an artist, and he got interested in the Chumash Indians and their rock art, being an artist himself.
How did that happen? What sparked his interest in Indian art?
Well, from what he told me, one day he was out hiking in the backcountry and he came across an Indian cave painting and was taken by it. And like I said, because he was interested in history and he was an artist, he saw something in the art that made a connection with him, and he spent the rest of his life studying that. Was
that here in this backcountry?
Yes.
So it was the Chumash
Indians in the Santa Barbara vicinity.
Yeah. So when did that start? How old were you when you got into?
Oh gosh, I must have been about 8 or 10 years old at that point.
Wow. So did you get to go out to the backcountry with him and look for?
Oh, yeah. I went on all of his trips. I've been all over the country exploring and researching for the books that he wrote.
Yeah. And what about here? How many places, how many sites are there?
In the Santa Barbara area, there's easily a dozen or so.
Okay.
Spread around.
Yeah. In the front country or the back country or both?
Well, yes, both.
Okay.
Both.
There's some unknown sites too, right? And like a lot of the public does not know about it. Right. And we're going to keep that secret probably.
Yeah. My dad, he wrote about them and told about their general vicinity, but he never specifically located them because many of them have been deteriorated over the years because of vandals and people with guns that thought it was great fun to shoot at these Indian rock paintings, which was just awful.
Yeah, I know. So, but you have one in particular that I think I heard you had a favorite. Could you tell us a story about that?
I do. You know, I went on so many of these trips with my dad, but one in particular we were in the foothills just in back of Santa Barbara, and my dad got some clues from a rancher or someone of that nature that they'd seen some Indian cave paintings somewhere up in the brush up there.
Mm-hmm.
So we were hiking along, trudging through the backcountry and through the brush, and as we did often, more times than not, we didn't find anything.
Uh-huh. Are there snakes?
Are there snakes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you see wild animals?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. What kind?
Well, there's foxes and raccoons and rattlesnakes now and then, but
No bears and mountain lions?
no. I mean, they're there, but I didn't have any encounters with them.
One time I thought I saw a beaver. Are there beavers out there?
A beaver? I don't believe so. Those are more water.
That's what I thought. It was at the river at Red Rock. And then
maybe. I mean, beavers are only around water, but I don't know if there's any in Red Rock or not.
Yeah, I mean, because it was a split second, and then I saw the tail. It was interesting. I'm not sure if it was a beaver. I don't know if they have beavers out here.
I don't know.
Could have been my imagination.
Yeah.
So you're out there in the bush trying to find.
Yeah, and I was maybe 12 years old or something, and trudging through the backcountry looking for rock art wasn't top of the pops for me. So I found this as I was looking around for this particular site. I ran across a little creek, and in the creek there was a little pond, and then I was playing around in the pond, and I saw a little salamander,
Mm-hmm.
and I thought, oh boy, this is really fun now.
Yeah.
And by and by, my dad yelled out to me, who was some distance away. He said, "Hey Doug, have you found anything?" And that sort of snapped me out of playing with the salamander, and I looked up above the salamander pond, and right there was a Chumash Indian painting of a salamander.
You're kidding.
Yeah.
Do you think he tried to show you where it was?
I don't know.
Possibly.
But it was one of the coolest connections that I had being a little kid. And so I just yelled out to my dad, "Yep.
Wow.
I think I found something."
That's such a great story. So, wow. Well, there's also some art out on the Channel Islands too?
The Channel Islands, there is some, very little.
Uh-huh.
My dad went out there studying for his books, and he became friends with Carrie Stanton, who used to own Santa Cruz Island.
Okay.
And he would fly over there in Carrie Stanton's plane from time to time. But I never went along on those trips.
Who was Carrie Stanton besides being just the owner of an island?
Well, he's a doctor, and I think, I can't elaborate on what he did and how he became the owner of the island. But ultimately, that's a whole nother story about what happened to the island.
Yeah. Well, didn't he have wine? Was he growing wine?
Oh, yeah. I believe,
he had a vineyard.
Yeah,
it's a vineyard.
Oh, there's an interesting story about that, because I think the vineyard was there before he acquired the property, but and I think it may have been during Prohibition, and Carrie Stanton was a relatively tight-knit conservative and thought this wine it's going to have to go. So the stories I've heard that he took all the barrels of wine and dumped them all out.
Mm-hmm. And what happened to the vineyard?
In the vineyards, they pulled all the vines out. But somebody had the wherewithal to grab a few clippings of the grapes, took them to Catalina Island, and restarted the vineyard on Catalina, and it's still there.
So what's it called? What's the wine called that they?
There's a vineyard in San Ynez Valley that purchases the grapes from Catalina Island and bottles it up. So it's to me, I call it Santa Cruz Island wine, but it actually comes from Santa Catalina to San Ynez. And I wish I could remember the name of the vineyard. But
well, maybe we could figure that out.
Yeah.
So you also have a love of the islands because you're a scuba diver, right?
Mm-hmm. That happened quite some time ago. After my professional racing career came to an end, my cousin Oliver Andrews, who was the son of Florrie Hyde, wife of Bobby Hyde. That's another story.
Okay. But who's Bobby Hyde?
Bobby Hyde, he was the original owner of most of Mountain Drive.
Yeah, the hippie colony.
That's the one.
Yes, very famous, actually. I mean, to the people that are in the know.
Yeah. If you know anything about Santa Barbara and the Santa Barbara area and the history, and the minute you say Bobby Hyde, immediately you say Mountain Drive.
Yeah, I saw some crazy things going on up there.
Yeah,
I mean, wholesome.
Yeah, no, wholesome things. It was kind of a generation before me, so I can't really elaborate on it. But there was wine stomping and running around naked and stomping wine and on like that. Interesting stories I've heard of.
Yeah, I guess that could be wholesome.
yeah, why not? So, I was starting to tell you about my cousin who introduced me to scuba diving.
Yeah,
and I can remember back then growing up in Carpinteria, looking out at the Channel Islands, there were just these gray silhouettes on the horizon, and I never had an opportunity to go there. Didn't have any idea what was out there, and I was always curious. Well,
your dad never took you out there when he's...
No, that was one of the few Indian cave painting trips that I never got invited to go on.
It must have been a little bit more difficult to get out there too, because...
It was.
Yeah.
It was. You'd have to go by boat, or in his situation, he got to be friends, like I said, with the owner of the island, so we got to fly out there.
Oh, that might be easier.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're looking at these islands, and that drew you to the ocean?
Well, I went out and I went scuba diving on Anacapa Island. It was my first diving trip. And I was just gobsmacked. It was fabulous. It was that time that really set the hook with me and diving in the underwater world of the Channel Islands and seeing these fabulous, relatively untouched islands.
Yeah.
And
what kind of fish are out there? Like, what do you see?
All kinds. I think Jacques Cousteau once said that the Santa Barbara Channel Islands are one of the most biodiverse diving spots in the world, which I guess that means it's got more different species, more different species of plant life and fish than any other place he's been.
Is it really clear, or what's the water like?
It's generally much, much more clear there than it is here on the coast.
Yeah. Yeah.
A little bit more chilly, but...
Yes. And the islands, they stretch from where to where?
Well, the northernmost island, San Miguel, and then it stretches all the way down from San Miguel, Santa Rosa, Santa Cruz, Anacapa, Santa Barbara, San Nicolas, Catalina, and San Clemente.
Yeah.
This is farther south.
Well, so when we were at the Crissman, the grand opening of the Crissman Channel Islands Center, out in front, there are replicas.
Yes.
Metal structures.
Yes.
That represent the islands. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's a fascinating representation that they did there because when you say this island is twice as big as that island, you don't really get a flavor for it. They made these really cool iron benches that are actual scale models and cutouts of all 8 Channel Islands.
Yeah, you could see the scale between, what's the smallest island again?
Santa Barbara.
Yeah.
Santa Barbara Island is, the representation is probably about a foot square, whereas Santa Cruz is 30 feet long.
Yes.
So you get the idea of the scale. And the other fascinating thing about that is that not only did they make their cutouts an exact scale replication of their shape, the placement of them is also to scale.
Oh, really? Okay.
So you can see the distance between each island.
Yeah. So which islands did you scuba dive at?
I've been to all of them.
You even at that tiny one?
No, I take that back. I've been diving on every island. The one I've done the most diving on is Santa Cruz.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've set foot on all 8 islands.
Yes, I was going to ask you about that. So I just found out about the All 8 Club, which I didn't know existed. So you're a member of the All 8 Club.
I am.
So what does that mean?
Well, it's a funny story. I belong to the Paradise Dive Club in Santa Barbara. And one time, one of my buddies there asked me, had I ever been to all 8 of the islands? And I scratched my head because I never thought about it. I've been to 5. I think I'd been to 5 of them. And I thought, this would be cool. I'll better put that on my bucket list. And I decided to go to all 8.
Yeah.
And so I...
Is it easy to get to all 8?
No.
Okay, why is it difficult?
Well, it's a little difficult because you have to have a boat for one thing, and the weather sometimes on the outer islands can be questionable. That's one problem. And the other problem are two of the islands are run by the military. The Navy operates San Clemente and San Nicolas. And I was invited to go on to San Nicolas to go out there and do some work for them to plant some indigenous plants. So that's the way I got to go there.
Yeah.
And San Clemente Island is also run by the Navy. And there's only a few spots that they sort of turn a blind eye on and let you land, but you can't stay there.
Oh, yeah.
And one day I snuck in and paddled ashore, put my feet in the sand, took a selfie just to prove that I actually put my feet on the island. Because that's one of the prerequisites to being in the All Eight Club. Is you can't just go there. You have to actually put your foot on the soil.
Yeah. So there aren't that many. So what member are you?
I'm 220.
So 220. And when did you become a member of this All Eight Club?
I think it must have been 5 or 6 years ago.
Oh, just recently?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 220 in all those years. So how many? That's not a very big number.
It's
how many are there total?
There's I think there's only about maybe 230 at this point.
Okay.
It's really it's difficult to actually do that. And surprisingly enough, what I've been told, there are more people that have climbed Mount Everest than belong to the All Eight Club.
No.
And you would think that's ridiculous. They're right there. Anybody can go, but it's not that easy.
Yeah. So your last island, did you go by yourself? How did you go?
Yeah, the last 3 islands I did by myself.
I mean, I remember going out to Santa Cruz when it was still privately owned. It's now, what is it, owned by the state or
it's owned
who runs
by
it?
the Nature Conservancy and the National Park Service.
Yeah, but I remember going out there. I mean, it was so choppy.
Yeah.
Every time that boat came down off the backside of the wake, it was like riding a roller coaster. Yeah, I mean, it could be really...
The Santa Barbara Channel can change in a heartbeat. And a lot of people have scary stories about that. And being a boater for most of my life, the days that I go to the islands, Mother Nature picks that day, not me.
Yeah. But do you take precautions or anything?
That's the precaution. You look at the weather and you look at the wind and you look at the forecasts and then you look at the water, and if it's good, you go, and if it's not, you don't. When I did it very cautiously. I have a satellite radio strapped to myself because I was doing this alone.
Yeah.
Number one, I was tethered to my boat, so I can't fall over. I've got an automatically inflatable personal flotation device on me at all times, and I also have strapped to me is a radio transmitter, which is a satellite radio.
Yeah.
That all I have to do is push a button, and it sends a beacon to a satellite. And then the Coast Guard and any other emergency services are alerted, and they come and get me.
Yeah.
And fortunately, I never had to use it, but I had that because I didn't want to be foolish.
It does seem like it's really close, but that voyage out can be perilous. Yes,
it can change.
Yeah. Let's go back to the new Crissman Channel Islands Center. Right?
Yes.
So you invited me to the grand opening, and there was a lovely crowd there. So you're kind of an ambassador.
I've been volunteering there for a number of years, helping them to get it up and running.
Yeah. And so you did some, being in construction, you were able to lend a helping hand, right?
Yeah. It was a lot of fun. There was at first we built some. I built some of the cabinets, some of the display cases that are inside.
Yeah.
But actually, the more fun thing that I did was the center is actually the old Bank of America in Carpinteria, and it had some old growth redwood siding.
Was it painted? I don't remember that.
It was painted on one side, but I ripped it off. On the other side was this beautiful redwood. And I said, whoa, look at this. And so what I did was I cut it all up and turned it into benches. And so when you go to the center, you'll see there's a dozen or so benches that are all made of this old growth redwood that are exact copies of the same benches that are out on Santa Cruz Island in the chapel.
Oh, nice. Yeah. So, what else are you doing right now? You've been kind of busy. Do you work?
Well, I'm semi-retired. I'm a licensed general building contractor still.
Uh-huh. Oh, okay.
And
that's good to know.
Yeah. I work a little bit. I take on small jobs these days. I don't do anything big anymore. But yeah, because I like what I do, and it's. Are
you doing fun. Anything else?
Well, I do a little bit of volunteer work. Every Wednesday, I volunteer for the Organic Soup Kitchen, and I deliver soup to cancer patients and elderly people and other people that have compromised health issues.
Yeah.
And it's very gratifying to be able to help people in need.
How did you find them?
Some friends of mine invited me out to lunch. And little did I know that it was going to be a fundraiser for the Organic Soup Kitchen. And it was really cool getting exposed to these people and what they do. And I sort of shrugged my shoulder and said, well, I don't have a lot of money to donate, but I do have some time. Mm-hmm. What can I do for you?
Yeah.
And the rest is history.
Yeah. I want to go back to your motocross days. So how did that start?
Well, it started a long time ago when I was a teenager. I bought myself a moped when I was 14. And I thought that was really cool. And so I rode that all around my grandfather's ranch.
How big was the ranch?
Well, back then it was over 100 acres.
So you're just off-roading and doing jumps and stuff?
Yeah, I was going around, and before you knew it, my moped turned into a trail bike, and before you know it, my trail bike turned into a race bike. And
you're doing laps around his ranch?
Yeah.
Oh my God, how funny. Did you take it to school?
Initially, what turned it into my trail bike, I used to ride that to school. And the trail bike is the one that got stripped down and turned into a race bike. And then the race bike got to be a bigger race bike and a faster race bike. And before you knew it, I started winning races.
You decided to start racing.
And then, I blinked and I became a professional motocross racer. It's interesting because that was all by accident. I didn't wake up one day and say, I want to grow up to be a professional motocross racer. It just that I loved riding, which meant, and I got pretty good at it. So
until what age did you race?
I started racing when I was 16, when I was still in high school, and I raced until I was 23.
Okay.
And I would have kept racing, except for I was involved with a pretty serious automobile accident.
Oh, wow. Yeah. But I saw you riding around your own property on your wedding day on one of those things. I had no idea. I'm like, in your tuxedo.
Yeah, that's kind of an interesting story. I quit racing at that point when I was in my early 20s. And about 20 years later, I picked it up again.
Oh, you did?
Racing old vintage motorcycles. And I did that for another number of years.
Yes.
And I still have one.
Oh, wow.
I don't really ride it much anymore, but I did take the opportunity to enter my wedding on my race bike.
So it's an off-road bike, though.
It is. It's a dirt bike. It's a race. It's a full-blown motocross race bike.
Yeah. Have you ridden it since the wedding?
No.
It's funny.
I rode it back and I put it back in its workshop where it belongs.
Yeah. Well, hopefully it'll come back out again.
Yeah. Maybe I'll hang it in a tree or something.
Yeah. My friend has a ranch and she has a motorcycle hanging from the trellis and they turned it into a light fixture. Yeah. If you want to do that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Meg thinks that it would be fun if we sliced it in half and stuck it on the wall like artwork.
Maybe Burning Man style.
Yeah.
So you're on a property that's been in the family for 3 generations?
Yes. It's like I said earlier, it's a property that was bought by my grandfather about 1914, I believe. And they moved out from Washington, D.C. and built a very large ranch house, the house that I ultimately grew up in. So I was lucky enough to grow up in this great big ranch house with my father and my mother and my grandmother and my grandfather and my 2 sisters and my brother.
It's so good that you're doing this because it's nice to preserve memories and share stories. So what would you like to leave behind as your legacy? What will your legacy be?
Well, I don't think about it much. A couple of years ago, I ended up writing a semi-autobiographical story about my life because I was traveling around Scotland with my youngest daughter once a few years ago, and she was, I guess, just about 20 years old. And she was telling me, I was asking her stories about what does she want to do with her life? Where does she want to go? Does she like to travel? And I was telling her a few stories about my life and my travels. And she said, gee, Dad, I didn't know you've done that. And it came to the realization that there's so much of my life that my kids don't even know about. And so I wrote this book, this story about all my experiences, where I'd done my travels and my professional experience and my education, just so it could be passed on.
It's nice to hear you tell your story too.
Yeah, well, that's what I think is fascinating. What you're doing right now, Kathy, is that you're allowing me to share this fabulous life that I've had with people that wouldn't otherwise know. And give me the opportunity to tell the world what a fabulous place the Santa Barbara area is and how diverse it is, and the various different people that I've had the good fortune to meet and grow up around.
So let's hear about, so your mom and dad, how did they meet?
I don't know. I wasn't there.
Okay. They didn't tell you?
They met at a party in Montecito. And I do remember part of this. My mom tells me this story after my dad had passed, but she said that they were at a party in Montecito, and the part of the party was playing hide and seek. And so my dad grabbed what would ultimately become my mother, this woman, said, "Hey, I know a place to hide." And I wanted to ask her what they did when they went to hide, but I just didn't want to know.
Well, that's why you're here now.
Yeah, apparently so.
Yeah.
In any case, after I got to be kindergarten age, my mother, who loved kids, she went to work as a preschool teacher, and ultimately she founded what's now known in Carpinteria as the Lou Grant Parent-Child Workshop.
Oh, you're kidding. I did not know that.
Yeah, well,
I know her last name is Grant.
Yeah, she founded it, and when she retired after 25 years, they named it after her.
Wow, that is a great story. Okay, see, you learn something new every day when you talk to people, right? And then you told me something about when your dad was an illustrator that related to your mother. Oh,
yeah, that's another funny story. And that's really disappointing that I don't think I gave my dad enough credit when he was still alive. He was a fabulous human being.
Yeah.
Not only all of his research and work for Indians and Chumash rock art, but when he was an illustrator, my mother told me this story, that one day Walt Disney, I can sort of imagine how it looked. One day while working as an artist in Walt Disney Studios, Walt comes over, puts his hand on the back of my dad, says, "Campbell, we want to turn the story Cinderella into a little golden book." And my dad would look up at him and say, "Okay, sure, Walt. What does Cinderella look like?" And Walt says, "Campbell, you're the artist. You decide." So he shrugs his shoulder and folds up and goes home, sits my mother down and uses her as the
model, I guess.
As the model.
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so when you see an image of Cinderella,
that's your mom?
That's my mom.
That's what she looks like. I want to see a picture of her.
Okay. I'll show it to you.
Okay, great. So your dad had some books out. What are they called? And where can you find those?
Well, let's see. The first book he wrote was Rock Art of the Chumash. And of course, that Chumash is the indigenous tribe of the Santa Barbara area. And then he went on to write Rock Art of the American Indian and several other books. One, Rock Art of the Coastal Range, Rock Art of California, and ultimately there were 7 of them.
Does he have a drawing or a painting in the Natural History Museum too?
Yeah, he does. He does.
Yeah.
And there's a funny story behind that one.
Oh, yeah?
Because he was associated with the Museum of Natural History. In fact, they sponsored him for some of the research for his first book. And many of the things you'll see in the Indian Hall were things that he donated.
Oh.
So they called him up one day and said, you're an artist. Would you mind painting a mural on the wall? And he was too busy or didn't really feel like climbing up on a ladder and doing it. So they hired me to do it instead.
Oh, do they know? It's not really him. It's Doug Grant. Not.
So I painted the one.
That's great.
I painted the mural up there.
Yeah. Yeah. What's your fondest memory? Or I'm sure there's lots, but are there any memories from growing up and living in Santa Barbara that pop up in your head that you want to share with us that makes you feel so blessed to live here?
It's funny that the thing that I always say to out-of-towners, as I say, the old saying, they say the grass is always greener on the other side of the fence.
Uh-huh.
Well, I've been to the other side of the fence.
Uh-huh.
It's not greener. No, I've really enjoyed. This property. It's on a ranch in the foothills in back of Carpinteria, and so I feel really fortunate that I was able to grow up here.
Yes,
and had a great life experience.
Well, you can feel the abundance. Well, thank you for sharing all that.
And
nice to hear your stories. It was really fun. I love talking to you. You got all kinds of stuff.
Kathy, it's a pleasure chatting with you. I love sort of, like I say, I've had a blessed, fabulous life, and some of the questions you've asked me have reminded of how fabulous it was.
Yeah.
It is.
It is. Okay, great. Thank you. We hope you enjoyed listening to this episode, and if so, please share it with your friends and family and give it a 5-star rating. And follow me on Instagram at Living in Santa Barbara. Stay tuned for the next episode where I'll connect you with more incredible people that make Santa Barbara a wonderful community.